What is up, everybody? Brian Mendler back in your life on this Monday in February, and I am super excited today to be joined by my friend, a special ed teacher from the middle of Nebraska, correct?
Omaha, Nebraska. Yeah. hmm
Hannah Andahl-Newman, and I got it right, correct?
You got it.
I was working on your name a little bit, so why the hyphenated name? What's the significance there?
So I got pregnant at 19 and had a daughter. And then I got married at 24 to my now husband. And so growing up, my mom got married older, and so I just had a hard time with her changing her name, and like my last name was different, so I just wanted to still have my oldest daughter feel that I wasn't just leaving her, so I hyphenated my last name.
Interesting. So a daughter at 19, I'm guessing not planned, correct?
Correct, yeah, for sure.
So what
hmm
was going on in your life? Anything going on in your life,
Well,
or just a
it was
new
my
life
first
was happening?
semester of college, and I was just like having a great time. And so I got pregnant unexpectedly, and it was hard. It was really hard. I had a full ride scholarship, and I was terrified that, I wasn't going to meet my requirements and this and that. And so I really just kind of thought I had something to prove to everybody. And so I had her Labor Day weekend. I had her on a Saturday, and I went back to class on Tuesday. Just
Wow.
and that was insane. Like I would totally go back now and slap myself in the face and be like, "Don't do that."
So
But sorry, go ahead.
what was the hardest part about it? Like when you say it was really hard, what was so hard?
I just think um, the emotional baggage that comes with that, and just now, at 19, now I'm responsible for another little human being. And I was really lucky. I had a lot of friends and family that helped me. And still to this day but I don't know what I would have done without like my mom there and family and
Yeah.
friends to
So
get
you
through.
were on full ride scholarship for what?
Academics and social economic status. My mom was a single mom, and so it was kind of like all or nothing for this scholarship. And when I got it, it was crazy that I got it. Um, and so I
Were
didn't
you,
want to lose it.
were you not expecting it?
Like I went for quite a few scholarships my senior year, and there was another big one that I went for, and I didn't get it, and it was just kind of like, oh, how am I going to pay for college? I mean, there was $0 saved for me to go to
Mm,
college, and so it was just kind of like, this is what I want to do. I knew I wanted to be a teacher. I knew I wanted to be a special ed teacher, but I didn't really know how I was going to do it, and so it was just kind of like, get a scholarship, or I'd be drowning in loans. So um, yeah, that scholarship, saved me.
Do me a favor, slide your body over a little bit to the left. There you go. Perfect. My OCD is kicking in. There you go.
There
I'm
we
trying
go.
to center you. Excellent. So you said single mom. Did you grow up without a dad, or have you had a dad in your life, just wasn't with your mom?
So my parents were never married. They split up when I was about two, and my dad was in and out of my life. He moved to Florida, maybe when I was like 12, later elementary. Stayed in contact here and there. When I was a rebellious teen, my mom shipped me to Florida for 2 weeks, and I just came home with a suitcase full of new clothes and whatever. I mean, I went to
Yeah.
Florida for 2 weeks, and then we kind of had a falling out after I had my daughter. Just some different thoughts and ideas. And then when my grandma passed away a few years ago, I just kind of like realized like family is means a lot, and like because when I stopped having contact with him, I also stopped having contact with my grandma and my aunt on that
Mm.
side, and so I was just like, you know what, I'm going to reach out. And so I have a really good relationship with my dad now. He was in Omaha when we started talking again, and then he's recently moved to Texas. And, it works. We talk on the phone, and then when he comes into town, he comes and visits the kids. And he's a great grandpa. He loves my kids, and he does, we've come a long way. So we're in a good spot now.
It's amazing to me how different it is in the world between being a parent and a grandparent. And I see that with my parents because, I think the frustration and the annoyance that is so equally comes with your own kids is just you have this level of patience with your grandchildren that you don't have with your own kids. And, I say that to my kids all the time that I hope I live long enough to see them have kids because it's so stressful having your own kids, but as a grandparent, you can just give them back. And so you can have, it's like being an aunt or an uncle as well. You can just hang out with them, have fun with them and give them back. Was your rebellious stage, you said rebellious teens, was that at the same point that like you were missing your dad? Did that have did that play a part in it, or what did play a part in your rebelliousness as a teen?
My grandpa passed away when I was 15. He had battled ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, for years. And he was a huge father figure for me. And that was really hard. And like rebellious just as in like I was a really good student. I was on National Honor Society, like school was huge to me. Like nothing got in the way of school. I was a really good student, but like I liked going out with my friends. And I just think for my mom, I'm an only child, and so and my mom was a really rebellious teen, and she was worried that I was going to go down this path that she did. And really I wasn't. It was more just like experimenting and hanging out with my boyfriend and those types of things that my mom was just like, this is too much for me, and we talk about it now and she's like, yeah, you were such a good kid. I don't know what I was like, it's kind of like that. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just my teens. It was like your typical teenage years. I don't
Yeah.
think it was anything too
So
crazy.
So what led you to want to be a special ed teacher? Like what took you down that path? Do me a favor, you got to slide over just a little bit because now that sun glares right on you. So
Sorry,
we there you go, perfect. That's perfect right there. Leave it just like that.
this is
Excellent.
like the nicest part of my classroom.
I love that, by the way. It says what does it say behind you? Welcome to our classroom. Very nice. And you've got a nice sweater on. So, and by the way, I can see this. And what's really cool is that now my listeners can see it too, because starting with the George Kuros episode, which I think was 2 episodes ago, we are now uploading the full episode to YouTube. So people can go on YouTube. It's not actually on my YouTube page. It's on the Teacher Learning Center. That's actually the company that sponsors me that does all these. So if you go to I think it's TLC seminars, people can actually watch us as well, which is really cool. And you know why? So my goal for 2020 is to build a YouTube page. Like I've built my Instagram page, and the reason I started with this is because I was getting multiple messages from people. I want to say this properly, hearing impaired, deaf people who were messaging me saying, we want to listen to your podcast, but we can't. There's nowhere for us to listen to it. And so I was like, oh my gosh, how really like what's the word? In not
Inclusive.
sincere, but yeah, like I wasn't really thinking of them, and so I'm like, I got to get this on YouTube. So now on YouTube, they can push one button, I believe, and the closed captioning comes on so you can read what we're saying. Amazing how technology is. So what made you want to be a special ed person?
I always wanted to be a teacher since kindergarten, third grade. Always just knew I wanted a classroom and to be a teacher. And then when I was 12, my cousin was born with Down syndrome, and he lives in Virginia, and we would go and visit him, and I fell in love with him, and I wanted to help kids like him. And then, of course, when I got to UNO, University of Nebraska, Omaha, I was taking teaching classes, and, you would hear it was hard getting teaching jobs, but there's always special ed jobs. And I was like, okay, well, that's what I want to do anyways. And so that's just where I landed. I student taught for a semester in first grade at a Title I building, and I loved it. I was like willing to give up special ed if I could get a classroom in that building because I had a great experience there. but it didn't work, it didn't work out that way. And so I continued on and I did my special ed student teaching in another district. And now I work for that district and I love it. I love my job.
What did you love most about that Title One building? What's something that jumps out that you love when you say you loved it, and to the point where you would have given up special ed in that moment to get your own first grade classroom? Because I don't think a lot of people would say that. I think when you talk about Title One schools, and most people kind of go, "Whoa, that's a tough environment." Why did you love it so much?
I I don't know. I had a great cooperating teacher, Chris Richardson. He first grade male teacher, right? You're like, whoa. I was like, oh, we'll see how this goes. And man, he just let me be me. And, I remember the first couple, you have this like timeline of when you take over and stuff. And I was like falling asleep in the back. I'm not even kidding, And he was like, do you like want to teach? And I was like, please. And like I took over like within the first 2 weeks and I taught up until my last day there. And we had 27 first graders. We had 3 kids named Angel. It was awesome. Like those kids were just amazing. And that at that building there was 3 sections of each grade, so 3 kindergarten classes, it was huge, but like the teachers loved being there. Like I cannot remember hearing another teacher complain. And I'm sure it happened, now working in a build, like it happens, but I don't know if he just didn't surround himself with that, or a huge thing that he did was he ate lunch with his class every day. We ate lunch with those kids every single day in the cafeteria, and then we would go
Hmm.
to the lounge while they were at recess. And that was just, I loved that because you really connected with the kids in a non-academic environment, and they loved it. They ate that up. And so even now I try and go and eat lunch with kids, or even just pull kids to eat lunch with me, because it has a huge impact on kids, to just give them your time, that's not, a time you have to be with them.
Yes, and I say that all the time. One of my rules for relationship building is that required time doesn't count. So if you take required time out of the mix, how much time are you actually spending going out of your way to get to know that kid? And what I love about what you said is you said we had lunch with them every day, but we went to the cafeteria, which I'm cool with bringing them into your classroom too, but I like going to their world. The concept of picking myself up and taking myself to where they are versus forcing them to come to me is something that I'm a huge fan of, because it allows you to go be a part of their environment, and you get to sit at the table and experience the noise of the cafeteria and the chaos in there. And it just gives you I think a different perspective on school just in general than you get from sitting inside your classroom,
For sure.
you
Yeah.
know. Do you remember any kids specifically that had an impact on you? Any kids that jump out where you're like, I remember this one specifically?
Oh, tons. I think one of my favorite stories is, she's still one of my students. She's in upper elementary, and I love telling people that don't know her that she used to spit on me. And they're like, what? Like, no way, not that kid. And I'm like, oh, yeah. So when she was in first grade, she just had a really hard time regulating her emotions, and transitioning from preferred activities to non-preferred were hard, like super hard. And so we put a lot into place for her, and like now she's thriving in her classroom, and it's just so cool to see. And um, we have such a strong relationship, and when she goes off to middle school it'll be really sad.
Okay, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but this is a hard one for me. So spitting is a hard one. Like when people ask me questions about kids who spit, like, what do I do with a kid who spits? Because it's that physical in your face, and it's so hard to not react and not get angry and not get frustrated. What specific strategies do you have for teachers that spit, or for kids that spit on their teachers or spit in class?
Um, so
Other than learning where it comes, figuring out where the behavior is coming from and addressing that, what do they do what did you do in the moment when she was spitting on you?
in the moment, a lot of times you just got to turn your body. One thing one of my assistants or paraeducators did for me was make spit shields. And it was actually awesome because she put like inspirational quotes on the
Get
inside.
out.
So it was just kind of because it like in the moment that I mean you're just like this is my job right now, and it's just like yeah, like that's what's happening. And honestly, with her, I feel like between the relationship building and um, she had an individualized behavior chart. She had multiple breaks throughout her day, multiple times for reward. I did my research. I did a case study on her during my research in during grad school, and like putting all those things into place for her, I think is what stopped it, because it wasn't just like one day I'm gonna stop spitting, like,
Mhm.
or I did something in the moment that she stopped spitting. It took time. And then I've had another student within the last couple years, and he's a spitter, and sometimes we just would take like a tissue and put it up to his mouth, or like block something so it would be closer to him, and he's not a fan. So
Mhm.
he doesn't really spit anymore either. You just kind of gotta try different things and always be willing to pull something new out of your hat.
Yeah, I mean, it's to me that's one of the hardest things that there is. I used to have a girl who would punch me. Her name was Liz. So she would walk in, she was 11th grader, and she would just punch me. And it wasn't brutal. I mean, it didn't hurt that much, but it was annoying. I mean, I certainly didn't enjoy it. And I was trying to figure out what to do. And I actually met with my so this was when I was teaching self-contained, and we had a counselor that was tied to our program. And he came down to my room one day and he said, actually, she really likes you. And I was like, she really likes me? That's a really strange way of showing it. And he said, well, the only form of affection that she sees at home between her parents is them hitting each other. That's all she ever sees. So she believes the way to show affection is to hit. And that's why she hits you. And it was interesting because she would hit me and kind of stand in front of me and smile while she was doing it, like totally unsure what to do and how to connect. And it was just so awkward because I never thought that way. That for me, there was, I have to step outside my own self and my own world, the world that I live in, to be able to understand somebody behaving that way. And I think even understanding it doesn't necessarily make it easy to handle in the moment, and I just think it would be really hard to stay calm in that moment. To me, like, I've never had a spitter. I was trying to think about this in my career. I've had one other guest on my show who talked about spitting, but I've never had that. Like, and I think for me personally, that would be a really hard one for me to handle. I think, like, you can call me names all day and that doesn't bother me at all. Or you can be disrespectful to me, but spitting, I mean, that's just a whole nother level, and it's just so sad that some kids resort to that. Did you know what was going on in her life at the time that was helping cause this?
I mean, kind of. She had a lot of medical stuff in her life, and she struggled with ADHD. I believe at that time she was unmedicated. And uh, we worked really closely with her mom, with her parents and her mom, and we still do. And I think, and that's another huge part of my job, is to connect with families. And in addition to building relationships with my students, I really try and do that with parents too, because I feel like a lot of times with challenging kids, all the parents hear is the negative. And, your kid did this today, or they're not doing that, or, blah, blah, blah. And I really try and help to tell a different story about their kid, and to help that student tell a different story about themselves. And, so I'm always telling kids, like, you know, it's a new hour, it's a new block in our day, we can reset, we can start over. And to show that, like, just because you had a hard time at 9 in the morning doesn't mean that has to go all the way to when the bell rings to leave.
No question. So what is exactly your job now? So we didn't get to that. So what specifically do you do now? You said handling and working with parents is a big part of your job. So what are the other parts?
So our building is K6, and so I have a teaching partner, and each year we look at our caseload and then we split them up. So each year I have different grade levels. So this year I have first grade, second grade, fifth grade, and sixth grade. And so then I am the case manager for students who have IEPs. And then so I program for them, so in my district we are full inclusion. So I have students on my caseload who just need help with reading, and then I have kids who just need help with behavior and social skills, or might need one-on-one adult support all day. They're on the autism spectrum. So I have a huge wide range of kids, and I love it. That keeps me on my toes. Um, yeah.
So you're jumping from class to class to class. You don't necessarily have your own class that you're lesson planning for. You're kind of on a daily basis figuring out what do the teachers need. So here are my kids. They're dispersed through a bunch of classes, and you're kind of almost jumping between classes, working with individuals in that class, correct?
Yeah, I do. That's called like push in. So I might push in for sixth grade math. So I go and I take a small group within the classroom, and it's not just kids on IEPs or in special ed. So if Joe, Sam, and Jim need help, I pull them all because it doesn't matter. And then in the mornings, I might pull another student and we do a reading intervention, and then I pull another student to do some behavior skills or take a break. So my day is all
Yeah.
over the place, and I love
How,
it. I never know what I'm going to get.
how do you feel about full inclusion? I think so. I'm obviously for inclusion. I think most people are, but I also think that there are certain kids in a lot of schools that need more. They just putting them in a class of 25 others is a recipe to set them up for failure. And so I actually think having self-contained is good, even though I think you got to be really careful and look at all the downsides to it. How do you feel about full inclusion? Do you see the ups and downs with it?
For sure, my district we have a self contained, I don't want to necessarily say classroom, but like it's called like your level 3 placement. So if a student cannot be in the classroom, or even like if I had a student right now that couldn't be in the classroom, they might be in my room all day, working on academics and skills and stuff like that. But if we get to a level where that's not even, if they need more, then we would have to have the data and all that stuff to show
Yeah.
that, and then we have that conversation as an IEP team. So we do have that, and I think I've never had a kid who has needed to get that far, or I haven't ever had a kid who's transitioned to my school from being, we call it I-66. And so um, it, it's there for a reason,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
but our goal for those kids is always to get them back at their home school.
Of course. What do you find the hardest part of the job to be? So I'll just tell you, like when I did inclusion, the hardest part for me was without question, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but it was trying to work with the teachers who weren't really interested in my help. And it wasn't most. Like most teachers were interested, and most teachers wanted to know my thoughts, and most teachers cared about my opinions. But there were always a couple that were just stubborn and just would not give in. And I would say, but if you just talk to the kid like this instead of like that, it's going to be so much. And no, he needs to change. He's in my class now. And for me, that was by far the number one struggle. Are there any struggles that you find with your job?
Yeah, I always kind of say it's harder working with adults than kids, because you can kind of help shape kids a little bit more. That's your job. But yeah, I agree. And like I've just this year, I've really just I try and lead by example. So when I'm in the classroom, I just try and have those conversations or engage how I normally would. And I just try and be that example for teachers, or say, this is what worked for me. And so, I try not to push stuff on my classroom teachers that I work with, because it just doesn't work. I've tried that before, saying do it this way, and so instead I'd be like, I've tried this, what do you think about that? Or and there we have great teachers at my school, and they're willing to try new things. And but you get those that are just stuck in their way, and it's really hard to change. I mean, I it was 2 years ago where I think I had that one kid, and I had an aha moment of my teaching. And it just, I don't know if everybody gets that, but like I I haven't been the same teacher that I was a
Tell,
few years
tell
ago.
me, tell me about that kid.
Um, he um finally, so he had been in my building since first grade, and he was in fifth grade, and kind of just flew under the radar. Super smart kid, but he had a reputation, and I had even had a negative interaction with him when he was in third grade. Okay, so he's in third grade, right? And now he's in fifth grade, and here he's coming my way where they're evaluating him, and it turns out he has autism and super smart, high functioning. And I remember telling my teaching partner, I was like, I can't do this. Like, I don't, this kid, like, this is going to be the hardest kid I've ever got. Like, I don't, what am I going to do with him? I don't know. Like, I can't, I was like terrified. And I don't know if, I was trying to think the other day, like, I don't know if it was a conversation I had with somebody else, or if I just, like, a light bulb came on and I was like, I'm this kid's last stop. Like, he's made it to fifth grade without any support, and like, he needs this. Like, he needs me. Like, there's a reason why he's coming to me, and like, I have I have to do this. Like, this is my job. And God, he's like one of my favorite kids.
What did you do with him to get him? I mean, what
So
steps did you take?
I threw academics out the window with him, and I built a relationship. He would come to, and I mean, do you know what a Raspberry Pi is? And here I'm like, pie you buy at Village Inn? And he's like, no. And it has to do with coding and I mean, this kid, brilliant with
Wow.
technology. And so, and I would just tell him, he's like, can I tell you about it? And I'm like, dude, it's probably going to go like this, but tell me all about it. Right. And so it was just taking the time to listen to what he had to say. Oh, Mrs. A, do you want to see this YouTube video? And here I am scrambling, trying to get, and you stop, and sure, man, I'll check that out. And that's so hard. It is so hard. And like, as a special ed teacher, like, my schedule's a little bit more flexible. I feel like that is one of the perks of my job, is that I can do those things. Whereas you're in a classroom with 25 kids, that's really hard to like
Yeah.
stop morning routine to watch a YouTube video, right?
Yeah.
That is so hard. Um,
But
so
what's not hard, not to interrupt you, but what's not hard is knowing that is learning that kid well enough to know that kid's going to want to watch a YouTube video. So before class even starts, pulling them aside and saying, by the way, buddy, if we get through morning routine, which is going to take us 5 minutes or 10 minutes or however long, 15 minutes, and you sit right next to me and everything goes well, I'm excited. In fact, why don't you get the YouTube video ready right now, so that right after, as soon as we're done, in fact, you can tell me when it's time to get it to do it, right? So that, as a general ed teacher, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for, how do I preempt this? How do I see this before it comes and before it happens? And so I'm literally preparing for it, and making it part of my day, and using it, like you said earlier, the word reward, using that as the kid behaves really well, as good, you get something at the end of your behavior. Didn't mean to interrupt you. I had to
no,
throw that.
and you're totally right. You're totally right. So, man, we did a lot with him, and I remember, apologies are really big for adults. When kids do something wrong, they really, um, I just learned that that's really huge for people and teachers. And so, there was an incident one day, and we were trying to facilitate an apology. I mean, I don't know if he had ever had to apologize to a teacher before, because he was a mess. And then we would do it again and do it again, and we would practice, and we had a script. I'm sorry for, next time I will, do you accept my apology?
Wait,
And it
slow down, slow down, slow down. So what is the script?
oh, it's my favorite. So, and my
Yeah, take
kids
us
even
through it.
tell me, I'm sorry for whatever you did, next time I will blank, do you accept my apology? And he went from, not looking down and, just mumbling to, by the time he left for middle school, able to look someone in the eye, say his apology, and even be sincere about it. Because what the first thing I said to him when we started it was, like, saying sorry, like, you might not, or not even telling him, but telling the teachers, like, it's not going to get sincere unless he practices and try, and sees how that benefits him. So you also need to say accept your apology, and then you need to move on with the day. Like, you can't let that behavior loom on him. Like, he has to have a fresh start. And
Right.
so then he can see that, okay, I apologized to that teacher, and then the day went on and it was fine. So that apologies equal good. So
Yes. And
yeah.
that's true with everybody. That's not just true you said teachers really like apologies. So do kids. Kids really like apologies too. Kids really like when a teacher walks up to them and say, "Hey, buddy, I want to talk to you real quick. I know today we got in an argument, but I was kind of loud and I called you out in front of your friends. And I know when I call you out in front of your friends, good things don't usually happen. And you get upset and then I get upset and then we both have our buttons pushed and we both feel aggravated with each other. And then I lose it even more and then you lose it even more. And listen, buddy, for the part that I played, I'm really, really sorry. From now on, I got to do better. Getting in your ear and talking to you privately. By the way, is there anything you could do differently next time where you own what you did first, and then you ask them after you own it what you ask them what they could do differently next time. A lot of times when I work in schools, what I see is when a kid is in trouble, so to speak, or misbehaving, and let's say they even leave class, a lot of times a teacher or an aide or somebody goes after them, but usually as they're going after them, like as they're catching up, they start with the words you should think about your behavior, you should pay attention to your surroundings, you should not talk like that to adults, you should. And what I've learned is basically anytime you say the words you should, the kid stops listening. Because and so instead start with right? I'm sorry. I need to be better. Sometimes, and usually that'll stop a kid in their tracks and they'll kind of look up at you almost shocked, like this guy just said he's sorry. And look, the truth is sometimes I would say I'm sorry to kids and I wasn't even sorry. I mean, but if that's the case, just and I know I've said this on here before, but it's a good reminder. Just say to the kid, listen, I'm sorry for the fact that anyone in our school would ever get as upset as you got for whatever I or any of my colleagues did that helped cause that. On behalf of all of us, I'm really, really sorry. I really am. I promise when we wake up in the morning, we never mean for anybody to get this mad. And that means somebody here did something that helped cause that. And on behalf of them, I want you to know that I apologize for all of us, and like when you go to that, and again, so I'm not necessarily even really sorry for anything specific, but I can still say it and make myself believe it because that is true, right? I mean, nobody ever wakes up in the morning saying, yeah, I want to go to school tomorrow. I can't wait for Johnny to flip his lid. I mean, right? No, we don't go to school. We all go to school hoping it's going to be I mean, they pay us the same every day. So it doesn't benefit teachers for kids to get riled up.
No. And you're totally right. I love apologizing to kids because they're like, what are you, you're sorry? And I had a student who ran out of the building, one day, and I was following her, and, I was trying to like get close to her, and I was like, I am so sorry. And she's like, what are you sorry for? And I said that I was like, I did not wake up this morning, with the intention of upsetting you so much that you left the building. Like that is not what she just kind of melted. She was just like, I know, I shouldn't have done that. Like, I'm really trying to work on, XYZ. And it's just like, the biggest thing that I've learned as a special ed teacher is you have to show these kids that you are human too. You make mistakes too. You are not like, when with kids on behavior charts and stuff, like, our goal is not 100%. Like, I do not have a 100% day. If somebody was tracking my behavior all day long, you better believe I would not be 100%. Like, that is not the goal. And I tell kids that all the time. And, like, I have rough days too. This is what happened to me this morning. This is what happened today, and like I think by telling kids and being vulnerable like that only helps them want to go to bat for you even. Like, oh, you're going to ask me to do something hard now. Okay, I'm going to try it because I know you're there to help me if I fall.
Yeah. I love the concept of behavior charts for adults. So behavior chart, so you can do behavior chart for kids, track the behavior of the adults and see if you're 100% all day because there's no shot. I mean, I procrastinate I'd probably be, middle of the road score if I was lucky, potentially middle of the road score. So the other thing you mentioned earlier was medication, which I think was interesting. You said finally that kid went on medication and things got better. I'm a big believer in medication. I take Concerta, which is, 54 milligrams, which is the highest dose you can take. And I always joke with teachers, I laugh and I say, what's interesting is that tell me you don't know if the kid didn't take their medicine within the first 30 seconds of the morning. And elementary teachers are hilarious because they don't care. They'll just, I mean, middle school and high school teachers, they don't care. So they'll just say to the kid, what, you didn't take your medication? Whereas elementary school teachers, it's like a whole production where they say, hey, Billy, come here, buddy. And Billy comes walking over and they say, that little orange thing? Did you not take that this morning? And the worst thing on planet Earth is when Billy's like, no, I didn't. And my mom says, I don't have to take it anymore. And now you're like, no, right? Because tell me that pill does not work, does it not? Have you seen tremendous transformations with kids who take meds?
Yes, huge. And and I totally respect parents who don't want to do meds. I totally get it. But for sure, I mean, there have been kids who have been off meds and then on meds, and their whole life is different. And even they say, like, I feel different and I'm more focused or I'm this or like I feel more in control. And, we have no med Mondays. We say that sometimes around here, and where kids forget to take, or parents. And especially for upper elementary kids that are aware, we'll ask like, hey, did you take your meds? No, I didn't, and like, okay, so how can we support that kid who didn't take their meds today? They're probably going to need some extra breaks. That maybe during work time, they need to come into my room and get a little extra love and support, jump on the trampoline, those things. That's out of our control if they took their meds or not. So what we have to do is what we can control, and that is support them through the day. Maybe give a little email to mom or dad, text message, just a little reminder that they didn't take their meds. But, we can only do what we can do, and our job is to support kids. And that's
Totally. And I don't, I'm a fan of medication. Obviously, I take it myself, but I'm not a doctor, and I don't try to pretend to be one. And so, but one of the strategies that I used to use, so a lot of times, very rarely did I have a kid say that they hated medication, other than that what they would say is that they didn't like how it made them feel. I would get that a lot. Like, they wouldn't say it's not working. What they would say is, I don't want to take this. I don't like how it makes me feel. And what I would say back is, well, the truth is it's supposed to make you feel differently. So it's actually doing its job. And what I would say to parents who, so a lot, if I knew a kid needed to be on medication, like I knew they needed it and the parent was totally reluctant, I don't think it's a good idea or smart move for a teacher to walk up to a parent and say, your kid should be on medicine. You could probably get in trouble for that. So I don't recommend doing that. What I would do though, is I would sort of kind of tiptoe around it a little bit. So I would pull a parent aside and I would say, hey, I want to let you, now I could say this truthfully, someone else might have to make this up a little bit, but I would say, hey, I just want to talk to you real quick. Your son, your daughter, they are amazing. And I would give them multiple compliments. I would say they're funny, they're spontaneous, they have a super creative mind, they think out of the box, in fact, I like them so much. They remind me a lot of myself when I was your kid's age. And man, they're funny. They're all the things that all the adjectives you could use in a positive way. And then I would say to them, a parent, and by the way, I want to be clear, like it's totally up to you. I would never tell you what to do with your kid because you're the parent, but I would love to let you know something that I did that helped me change my life in a positive way. I went on this thing called Concerta. And so I would tell them about myself, which did two things. Number one is it sort of laid the groundwork for, it's normal and it's okay, and regular people that can be successful in life can be on medicine. But number two is it also built a relationship at the same time with the parent. So now that I'm connecting with the parent by being vulnerable, by telling them my struggles, by telling them my story, and by comparing myself to their kid, which often they really liked. And so sometimes parents would say, I don't care, do whatever you want. Other times I would have parents say, you know what, I'm going to make an appointment with the doctor next week. And that was, I always found my best chance of getting them on. What, when you said earlier that you spend a lot of your job is communicating with parents, what is your best tips for doing that?
A lot of times I just see what works best for the parent. Some parents I do text because it's just easy. I really have never had a parent abuse having my phone number. But not every parent does. Emails are really good. And just even face to face, I'm at conferences, we meet at our annual IEP meetings. If parents want to meet more often, like I do that because it's kind of like with kids. If you put the time in at the beginning with them, they're going to trust you, like they're going to trust you and want to do anything they can for you too.
Yep.
This Christmas, I got a card from a parent and it said, "Welcome to our extended family." And I was like, oh, like I about died, because it's just like, that's what I'm here for. Like I'm here for these kids. And like, I think a huge thing that changed me is when I was at your workshop in November is when you said, like, this is your job. Like, you chose to work with challenging kids. You chose to be a special ed teacher. Because I have definitely, in my first few years of teaching, where I was just like, I didn't sign up for this. Like, no way, but I did. I totally signed up for this. And I don't know, it was just like this aha moment where it was just like, this is my job. And so, like, now when teachers are like, man, did you have a hard day? And I'm like, no, one of my students had a hard day. I didn't have a hard day, because that, like, I feel like for so many years I almost took on, like, the student's behavior. Like, if they're having a bad day, that made me have a bad, like, that is not the case at all, where it's just like, no, some of the kids on my caseload had a really hard day, but I did my job and I supported them through it. And that's what I'm supposed to do. One of my students this year had an anxiety attack, a legit, like, I have never really witnessed somebody do that. And I sat
What
there,
did that look like?
just brain she was just thinking super fast, and like her bot, like she was like, I need to squeeze something. I was like, take my hand. And I was kind of like, oh, you kind of get nervous. You're like, oh, how hard is she gonna squeeze? And it was just like she tightened, and then she would stand up, and it was almost like she was crawling out of her own skin. Like she could not control how she was feeling, and she was like, I need to squeeze something. And so I just gave her the biggest hug. Like, I have found this year, hugs have saved so many kids. Like, when they're having, whether it's a meltdown or an anxiety attack, like, just hug that kid. And so she asked, she was like, is this an anxiety attack? And I said, yes, it is. Like, and I'm here to get you through it. And she was like, you have so many other things to be doing right now. And I was like, no, this is my job right now. Is I am where I need to be, is to help you through this, and we'll get through it, and then we'll move on. And that's what we did. And it was just crazy. And I've had a parent who happened to be here when their student was having some uncharacteristic behavior, like just kind of melting down, and it really wasn't normal for him. And she was working through it with me and staying, but like it wasn't changing. And I told her, I said, you go home, it's okay. And as I'm shutting the door, she was like, I am so sorry. I'm like, this is my job.
Mm-hmm.
This is my job, is to work with these kids and to help them through, whatever they're going through.
Yeah.
And that's just changed. It's changed my teaching for sure.
And I think as a special ed teacher, us special ed people can view it that way. I think it's a lot harder for a lot of general ed people because, I think a lot of times general ed people, that's not what they signed up for. In their mind, they didn't sign up for that. They signed up to teach reading. They signed up to teach math. They signed up to teach social studies. And darn it, that's what they're there to teach. And and one of the things I do say at my workshops is, are you here to teach the kid, or are you here to teach the content? Which one is it? Do you kick out the kid because they got in the way of your content, or do you kick out the content because it's in the way of the kids? And I think us special ed people, we kick out content all the time, because the truth is, secretly between us, we don't really like it anyway. I mean, it's not what we're here for. It's not what excites us. It's not, I was never super pumped to be like, oh, I can't wait to go teach Shakespeare tomorrow. That was, I did it and I put up with it. And us special ed people will do our best job with whatever the content is, but that wasn't why I was there. So for me, when a kid came in, the thought process was, does he need to learn please and thank you, or does he need to learn Macbeth? Which one is it? It was please and thank you all day long for me, because to me, that was the most important skills that the kids were going to need in their life. And I say this all the time. I mean, traveling as much as I do, I probably say good morning, nice to see you, good to meet you, 150 to 200 times a day. I kid you not, a day. I don't recall the last time I've needed to know the causes of the Civil War by heart. And the thing is, if I needed to know them, I have this thing called a phone, and on that phone I have this app called Google, and in 2 seconds I could have a laundry list of the causes of the Civil War. So to me, it was always the social skills that were the most important, and it was diligently working on them. It was setting up scenarios that I knew kids were going to face during the day. It was thinking about the bus ride home, and about recess, and about lunch, and about who's going to be around who, and who's going to be hanging out with who, and who might say something to who, and okay, if this kid says this to you, how are you going to react so that there's not an argument? And it was that constant thought process. But I think that's what we went into it for. But I don't think everyone goes into it for that. But I think you learn pretty quick, that's what the job is. That's what the job is. And if you get really good at the social stuff, the academic stuff will take care of itself. And to be clear, I don't think they have to be mutually exclusive, one or the other. I mean, I think you can take social emotional and also turn that into a lesson. I remember when I was consulting at a school, forget exactly where I was, it was a high school, and this lady came down to me, and I was in the school for the whole day, and most of what I was doing this day was I was meeting with teachers in small groups. But this lady came to me and she said, my hardest class is right now. I want you to come to my room right now and see what's going on. So I walk in, and she was teaching ELA, and this kid walks in, and the first thing he says to her from across the room is, I just want you to know that I ain't about to do shit today. Just letting you know that I ain't doing nothing, right? And the teacher looks right at me, and she goes, what do you do about that? And I was like, what do you do about that? And I stood up, and I looked right at that kid, and I said, say that again. And so the kid looked at me, and he said, I ain't about to do shit today. And I said, perfect, let's start with that. And I wrote that on the board. I wrote, I ain't about to do shit today. And I looked at the whole class, and I said, all right, guys, what did he actually say? He just said, I ain't about to shit. And some other kid goes, well, he said he's going to do something because there's a double negative, and a double negative equals a positive. So I looked at the original kid, and I said, right, what are you going to do today? And he goes, no, that's not what I meant. And I said, okay, well, what did you mean? And he looks and he goes, in the most proper English you could imagine, he goes, I'm not going to do anything today. Got it? Just like that. And I looked at him, and I smiled, and I nodded, and I said, I got it. You just completely corrected your own grammar. Put your head down now. You're not allowed to do anything else the rest of the class. And I looked at the teacher, and I said, that's how you handle that. By using the momentum that the kid's bringing you. The kid is bringing you this lesson. He's handing you this lesson on a silver platter. But so many teachers are so busy focused on the lesson that they planned that they're missing the lessons the kids bring to them on a daily basis. And I think that's often the difference with special ed people is we're looking for the lessons that the kids are bringing us. And we have lessons too. Like, I'm willing to teach a lesson that I plan over here, but I'm much more willing to go with the lesson that I see in front of me. And I think if more teachers took that approach, there would be a lot less behavior issues in individual classrooms. Make sense?
Yeah. Well, and I love when you say, like, you got to catch it and set it down. So when kids are firing stuff at you, you just got to catch it and set it down.
Catch it.
I have spent a lot of years like holding it and like getting so worked up and so like, oh, that you just can't do that. I mean,
Yes.
at the end of the day, especially at the elementary level, these are little kids, and like, I don't truly think any kid wants to be the bad kid or bad, like they're going through something, whether, and we don't know the whole story. And so my biggest thing is sharing my calm. And so I have to be that calm person for them, because if I escalate with them, like, how my job's to de-escalate them. So if I get escalated, that it just doesn't help, right? So that's just what I've learned. And like to talk about hugging, like we've had a student who um, he's been struggling, with some transitions here and there, and I'll walk in and he's crying on the floor and like he's scratched somebody or hit somebody or, thrown his things, and I've just held my arms out and given him a hug, and then we still follow through with his timeout procedure or his compliance tasks. But like I feel like maybe sometimes people might see that as like giving in, but it's just like if I have a meltdown at home with my husband, like what does he do? He comes and hugs me. Like he doesn't punish me like go do this or I'm
Yeah.
not going to talk to you. Like I feel like you have to show those kids some compassion and
Yeah.
empathy. Like you did something like you felt so out of control, you did that. Let me help you get back down to baseline so that we can move on.
So a couple things to respond to there. Number one is I did a podcast with Jody Carrington. So I don't know if you've heard of Jody Carrington. She's the author of the book called Kids These Days. And actually, what's interesting is, so people know this, at the time that you and I are recording this right now, that podcast hasn't dropped yet. It drops Monday. But one of the things that she said in there that sticks out. So a lot of times when I get done with these, what's really great is there's usually one or two things that somebody says that I'll remember from each episode, and one of the things she talked about is that concept of almost, it looks to a lot of people like you're rewarding a kid after bad behavior. And she talked about a huge strategy that's effective when a kid has a meltdown is the minute they're over to give them something to eat and drink. And because they become so dehydrated and that helps focus them. And there are people that are not in the know that think you're rewarding them. Oh, that kid had a meltdown. Now they're drinking a Gatorade, or they had a meltdown and now they're having a sandwich. I mean, what is this? This is a party here or what? And she talked about sometimes you have to do things that might not in the regular eye, so to speak, be understood. And I think chemotherapy in that way. It's like doctors give cancer patients chemotherapy, and to the naked eye, it actually makes it look like they're getting worse in the moment. But those are people that are not trained. To the people that are trained, they know, yeah, sometimes it makes you look worse in the moment, but then it helps you get better. And that definitely jumped out to me when she talked about that.
Well, and like think about it. Like if you're, my mom always told me halt, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Like those are times where, even as an adult, we can really have some meltdowns. And so as a student, if you're having a meltdown or, some challenging behavior, as an adult, my job is to respond, calmly and rationally and like, hey, did you eat all your lunch today? Do you need a snack? Are you thirsty? Like, they don't necessarily know what their basic needs are, and it could be simple as eating a snack. I mean, I have
Yeah.
literally watched a kid have a horrible afternoon. I offered him a snack, he ate, and he was a different kid.
Yeah.
And so I just feel like we need to meet these kids. And like, then what does he see me as? Somebody who is giving him a punishment because he had a meltdown, or somebody like, that's a safe person. She's going to help me figure out what's going on.
Right, which is the key. And just the other thing you mentioned, and I can't leave you saying it without explaining to people who haven't been at my workshop what it is. When she said catch it, set it down, that's the analogy that I use for a kid who's saying or doing something inappropriate. And my thought process, I love baseball. My thought process is a 90-mile-an-hour fastball is coming from the pitcher to the catcher. There's only one way in the world to diffuse that fastball. And the only way to diffuse it is to catch it and set it down. And what happens, I think, metaphorically, is a lot of teachers try to hit that fastball back. And the problem when you hit it back is you might hit it, but it could take a bad hop. You don't know where it's going to go. It could hit someone in the face. If you're truly trying to diffuse the fastball, if that's your goal, then there's no other way to do it than to catch it and set it down. And then my specific with that is to just simply agree with the kid who's inappropriate, right? Mr. Mandler, you're a jerk, correct? And I could be a bigger one. Would you like to see? Or Mr. Mandler, this class, you're so dumb. Obviously, I mean, I picked this profession, did I not? For 40 grand a year to be yelled at by you all day long. Tell me how dumb I am, because I wasn't exactly sure I knew it on my own. Go ahead, tell me. See how you're able to take what they say and just sort of absorb it. It's not, and when the kid realizes that they're throwing that right hook and you're literally just catching it and setting it down, in their mind, they're kind of sitting there saying, what's the point of throwing it again? I mean, it doesn't affect this guy. Now, when I'm going to throw my right cross or my right hook or my left uppercut, I might as well do it to someone else, because that guy, he doesn't even get affected by it. And when you send that message to a kid, you often see them start to respond differently.
Yeah. I think, I've been called a lot of names before, but I think my favorite was from that little first grade spitter, and she told me that I was the best, worst teacher ever. And, I've owned that. People have given me Jimmy John sandwiches with that on there, and one of my assistants made like a trophy where it said that on it. I mean, you just gotta own it. Like, yeah, I know, yeah, I suck right now. You got it.
I had a teacher tell me one time that a kid came up to her and he said he was so angry, and he looked at her and he goes, you're a skinny ugly, and B cut bit B, we'll beat this. You're a skinny ugly bitch, and right to her face. And I said to her, whoa, what'd you do? And she goes, well, I called my husband right away. And I was like, at least somebody thinks I'm skinny. Nobody around here's ever told me I'm skinny. At least finally somebody told me. You got to tell me I'm skinny. Hey, Johnny, tell him how skinny I am. And like, just totally, she goes, I just focused on the skinny part. I pretended like he didn't say the other two words. Or, one of my other favorite ones, when I had a teacher one time in the Bronx tell me that a kid called her a mother effer right to her face. He goes, you're a mother effer. And I said, what'd you say back? She said, oh, I just looked him in the eyes and I told him the truth. Well, you got it half right, but I don't have any children yet. And she goes, and I got right back into my lesson. And, the kid was just baffled, just, whoa, what? But when you're able to do, and again, I'm not trying to pretend like it's easy to do that, but if you can stay in that mode, right, of I say this multiple times, hearing what kids are saying without listening to how they're saying it, stay personally connected to kids without taking personally what they do and say, it's so much easier to go to that place. We don't have a ton of time left. So before we wrap up, you have 3 kids, correct? So you told me about your one, and then what about the other 2? How do they are they how old are they, and how do they do in school? All your kids do well? They good kids?
Yeah, so Ella's my oldest. She's 12, and she's at a middle school, and she's amazing. And
That
then,
tells me how old you are. I'm doing
uh,
some quick math here. Good, gotcha.
and then Marley is 8 in second grade. And she told me today, she was like, "You could talk about me, Mom," and because she knows, she's heard your voice and stuff. And I said, could I share that you have struggled with behavior? And she was like, oh yeah, and talk about Sammy and my coping skills and stuff. So, I mean, it just doesn't stop at home, really, as a
Well,
teacher.
so share, what is it? What about her?
She anger, doesn't like the word no, or unpredictability, things like that. And so this last year, she started seeing a counselor once a week at school. We got hooked up with a program in her district, and it's really changed her life. I just feel that kids need as many people on their team as possible. And although I could teach, I just graduated with my master's in school counseling. Like, I could totally teach her all the coping skills up the wall, but like, I'm her mom, so having somebody else do it and, go to bat for her, has really helped her a lot. And I said, well, what is your number one thing that's helped you the most? And she was like, taking deep breaths. So that was just really cool. Yeah. And then I have an almost 3-year-old boy named Sam, and boys are so different than girls. So
I hear you. Very good. Cool. Well, listen, I appreciate this. So we're going to do a segment for Menler U. Do you know what Menler U is? Menler U is my subscription service. We're going to do a quick segment, but I'm going to read the question. So I have not told Hannah this question yet. I just got this question actually recently, which I thought was an interesting one. And I think this will be a good one for both of us to do. So I'm going to read it. We're going to stop this and then we'll restart it. And this will go on Menler U. So the question is, just got on Instagram. It says, how do you deal with students who constantly put on their hoods attached to their sweatshirts inside? This wasn't the one I was going to read. Hold on a second. That's a good one too, by the way. Hold on a second. So now, yeah, let's do that one. Let's do that one. Because, okay, so I can do this one. So when it is against the school dress code, I redirect students to take them off and kindly explain that it isn't my rule, but the school's, but I find myself redirecting over and over. Eventually, I just let it go because I know my administration does not want me writing referrals or sending them to the dean for such a minor infraction. I also don't want to do that anyway. So can you please help? So hoods, hats, jackets. In fact, I talked about this with Amy Fast last week a little bit, but we'll touch on it ourselves. Listen, Hannah, these hours go quick. I hope you enjoyed. Did you enjoy?
Yes, thank you so much. I
It
can't.
was fun having you. Sorry, what'd you say?
I said I can't believe that I'm here.
You're
So
here. You're
yeah.
here. And I appreciate you very much. I didn't get a chance to say this. When Hannah and I first met, I actually first got to see who you were on Twitter because you were coming to my seminar and you basically posted this kind of like a love note to me. No, I mean, but you were like, hey, I can't wait. Like, I'm super excited. I'm bringing my couple of my coworkers to see you. And that was in Omaha. And that's actually, I don't know if you know this, but that's one of my favorite venues. So I do that trip every year. Every year I do Sioux Falls, Omaha, and Des Moines, back to back to back cities. And I love the Omaha one because we do that one it's at the Ameristar Casino, and I'm a compulsive gambler. I don't gamble at all anymore, but I love the fact that I'm able to go to a casino now to work and get paid and not lose my money. And plus they have the buffet. So I messaged you and I said, I would love to have lunch with you and your friends. And then we had lunch and we were talking about the podcast. And, I love it when people have energy. I get excited for energy, and I get excited when people are like, I listen to your show. I love it. And, to me, that's the people that I want to have on. So I appreciate you very much. I appreciate all you're doing, everything that you're doing for these kids. It was great catching up with you, and I'll see you soon. Sound good?
Thanks so much. Sounds good.
Awesome job. All right. Now we'll just we'll keep going and we'll answer this. So let me
Oh
read
my
it.
gosh.
Okay. What's
I
that?
don't,
All right.
I
I'll
don't
go
really know if
first.
I have an answer. Okay.
I'll go first, and you can just play off me. We're gonna go quick here because I gotta get my kid to something in a little bit anyway. So, all right, ready? 3, 2, 1. Okay, guys, welcome back to Menler U. And the question today is, how do you deal with students who constantly put on their hoods attached to their sweatshirts inside when it's against the school dress code? I redirect students to take them off and kindly explain that it isn't my rule, but the school's, but I find myself redirecting over and over. Eventually, I just let it go because I know my administration does not want me writing referrals or sending them to the dean for such a minor offense. I also don't want to do that anyway. Help. Okay, so number one is you kind of don't get this both ways, I feel like. So as an administration, either you want to have a rule or you don't, I kind of feel like. And so, so they're going to have this rule where you say no hats, no hoods. And then at the same breath, they're going to say, but don't really enforce it because it's not that big a deal, which, okay, fine. But that's what I would do. I think what happens is I think we often get caught up in what the rule is instead of looking at the sort of the spirit of the rule. And I think what happens with hats and hoods is it's usually about a safety thing for people. It's usually an issue. It's usually in a middle school or high school that it's an issue. And it's usually that they're afraid if something happens, they can't tell who a student is on the cameras. And that's what I say to the kids. I say, listen, this has nothing to do with your expression or you wanting to be an individual or you wanting to show, do your thing. This is about safety. And so do me a favor. Every time you see a camera, just pull your hood back. Just pull your hood back, and the other thing is I like to pick my battles with kids. Just because there's a rule doesn't mean you always have to enforce it. I mean, have you ever driven down the road in a 40-mile-an-hour speed limit and gone 50 miles an hour? You've probably done that, correct? Maybe a little faster. And the thing is, sometimes you go past the police officer. And the truth is, they don't usually pull you over. Even though you're breaking a rule directly in front of their faces, they use judgment along with the rule. And so I think what I was really saying is I think the rule is in place as a safety measure, but I think as the quote unquote police officer, which is sort of what the teacher is in this moment, right? The teacher's job is, do I enforce this or not? So now you're sort of the cop. I think you're allowed to use judgment. And I don't think you should allow yourself to be annoyed or frustrated that you get to use judgment. And if your judgment says, this is no big deal, I don't really care, it's not affecting my learning, the lesson, it's not affecting his learning, then my answer is leave it alone and don't worry about leaving it alone. You agree at least?
Yeah, I do. I feel like explaining why the rule is there, like that is huge. Like in the hallway, dude, put your hood down. Just if something were to happen to you, wouldn't you want to know, you want us to be able to identify you, things like that. And I think also like you have to learn that there are different expectations in different environments. So like just think like as an adult, like you at your job there's certain rules and expectations and at the things like that. And so I think even in class that's a good place for kids in middle school and high school, like man, Mrs. A, like, I know I can wear my hood in her room, like, and it's all good, but like when I go to Mrs. Jensen's class, like, I better put my hood down. Like, she's a real stickler on that,
Right.
And like, but at the end of the day, they know why that rule is there is for safety. But, like, and so I totally agree with that. But they also have to, that's teaching kids how to be flexible too.
Correct. And it's kind of like you've ever driven that speeding analogy. You go past a cop, you slow down. And I say that to the kid, hey, listen, you walk by that lady over there, you know she's a stickler. Take your hood off, or she's gonna. And the thing is, if she pulls you over and I happen upon the scene, I'm gonna support her because she is my colleague. And I've told you this 100 times. So do yourself a favor when you walk past her, like you do when you drive past the cop, slow down. And then when you get to the other side, what do most people do? They probably speed back up. Well, you want to get to the other side, put your hat on, put your hood on, do your thing. But this isn't a Brian thing. And the other thing I would say to kids frequently is don't make me look bad. Like, don't make me look bad. I do everything in my power to make you look good. So don't make me look bad. And there are certain things that you can do that I agree with you. I'm for you. I'm with you. I think it's stupid to not be allowed to wear a hood. But if you put it on and other people see it, they're going to come to me. And they're going to be like, why is your student wearing his hood? How come you can't control him? And I don't want to deal with that. And so could you help me and make it where I don't have to deal with that? Because me having to deal with that is an extra headache for me. And I always found that when I had a good relationship with a kid, usually they would say, no problem, Mr. Mellner. That's cool. That's fine. I know. I agree with you. It's okay. And they would, and sometimes they'd even please each other, where kids would say, yo, dude, Mr. Mellner's already said, take your hat off, dude. You're making him look bad. He already admitted he doesn't care about hats, but don't do this here, because then the principal gets annoyed at him and we like him. And so that was always my goal, was for the kid to respect me enough to where whether it was a hat, hood, jacket, or anything else, they would do it simply because it was me being the one who asked them. And I think trying to get yourself to that point as a teacher, getting yourself to the point where this kid will do anything I ask him to do because he values me. When you can get yourself there. And so for this teacher, what I recommend is still continuing to connect, spending more time with that kid one-on-one. When you're with that kid, drop these little things that we're saying here, saying to the kid, hey, buddy, do me a favor, man. Just take your hood off. You make me look bad. I don't want to look bad. I believe in you. I got faith in you. Thank you so much. Thanking kids before they do things, sometimes really powerful. Thank you so much for picking up that piece of paper, even though I know you didn't drop it. I know you didn't drop it. I saw it there when you walked in, but listen, buddy, I appreciate you picking it up anyway. Thank you, man, for keeping this place clean. Usually they would do it even though they weren't even the one who dropped it. So that's your best. You do like I do with every one of these questions. Do the best you can. I appreciate you guys listening. Listen, for the rest of you guys, well, I'll do this at the end. Thank you guys so much. We'll catch you soon.